Continuing our discussion of general syntax in Perl, I'm going to talk about comments. So we'll start by taking this syntax.pl script and making a copy of it, and I'll name it comments.pl. And so we don't overwrite the original, and we can go ahead and edit it and do whatever we want to it. And I'm going to start by writing a little subroutine so we have something to write a comment about. And this is a recursive factorial. It's typically a programming exercise that you might get in school if you're learning programming. A factorial is a mathematical function. It's the product of all the integers up to and including the integer that you are factorialing. And so we'll start with the number and shift or return 0. That means that the function will be passed a number, and if it's not passed a number, I'll just return 0, which will be the answer for a missing number. And if n is greater than 1, because if it's not, then the factorial is always 1, then we'll return n times factorial. This is the recursive part because it's calling itself, n minus 1. And else return 1. So in the case where it is equal to 1, we just return 1. Now, I can explain all of this in comments if I want to. I can say here factorial n returns the product of all integers up to and including n. And I can say here return 0 if no n. So comments in Perl are introduced with the hash mark, that symbol there, the little tic-tac-toe-y looking thing. And everything, including the hash mark and to the end of the line, is ignored by the Perl interpreter. So they can be on a line by themselves like that, or they can be out here at the end of a line that actually has code in it. So anytime you have this hash mark, everything from there to the end will be ignored by the interpreter. So that is a comment. And so I can say here only compute for n is greater than 1. Return 1 for n equals 1. And I can say recursion because it's calling itself. So I have all these comments that I can make. In real life, I don't tend to write this many comments. Comments are an excellent thing. They're a great thing to do because it explains what's going on to somebody who comes by to read it later. If you have too many comments, there's a tendency for people to just read the comments and then they miss the code. So something like this one that says recursion is really superfluous. This one here is probably also superfluous because you can see from the code if n is greater than 1. So there's some guidelines for how to comment. And then up here, I can just call the function. I can say my n equals shift or 5 if nothing is passed in, and r equals factorial of n, and message n factorial is r. And I can save this and run it. And 5 factorial is 120. And if you remember the first few factorials from math class many, many years ago, you'll remember that that is the correct answer. You'll notice that I forgot the semicolon at the end here, and it worked anyway because it's the end of a block. I'm going to go ahead and put that in. And so here we have just an example of where you might use comments and how they are formatted in Perl. So it's a good idea to comment your subroutines like this. I usually do with how it's called and what it returns. And you might want to have comments at anything that you might want to explain that might actually warrant some explanation. I don't know. In this case, in real life, I might not have commented any of this because it's all seems pretty simple to me. But for the benefit of people who might come after me and might want to read this code later, I might put these comments in. I might say something up here like computed recursively. to make that obvious. But that's how comments are used in Perl, and that's how comments are formatted in Perl. And those are some general guidelines for using comments in your code.